This video is being filmed on the same day as my last video, so the kitchen renovations still happening, unfortunately. If you hear anything in the background, can't do anything about that, you know how it is. But what I can do is tell you about your faves and how I could not finish them. I'm honestly kind of joking because with these 5 books that I DNF'd this year, I was actually enjoying all of, well, with the exception of one, I was actually enjoying all of them to some extent, and I just stopped reading them for different reasons. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So the one book that I could say I definitely was not enjoying was Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi. I picked this one up because, as most of y'all know, I love A Very Large Expanse of Sea, and I know that this series is what Mafi is really well known for, so I decided to give it a try. I regret buying the entire first 5 books in the series thinking that I'd read all of them because I loved A Very Large Expanse of Sea. That was not a wise idea. And I noticed that there's a lot of people who say that they're scared to read A Very Large Expanse of Sea because they hated the Shatter Me series. I understand where you're coming from now, and I could tell you that two completely different things. This book, I mean, I only read the first like 33 pages, to be honest, like the first 5 chapters. Is this even a DNF? Or I barely started it. But I can say without a shadow of a doubt that A Very Large Expanse of Sea is an improvement upon Mafi's writing. This was her first book, and that was one of her most recent novels. This book, I could not get into it. I felt like I was having some kind of migraine or headache reading it. I think part of it has to do with the setting, because I'm really not a fan of like that kind of sad, drab, dystopian setting, and that's what this book is set in, and I wasn't really feeling that. The writing in here, oh my god, I don't even know where to start. First of all, there's this kind of like cross-off thing that she's doing, because I guess the main character is thinking things, but that's not what she's admitting to herself out loud, and I don't quite get it. It's like I'm not insane 50 million times crossed out, and then horror rips my eyelids open. I'm enjoying the hammering more than I was enjoying this book. I really wanted to love it because I love Mafi, I adore her, and I love the other book that I read from her, and I'm really looking forward to her new book coming out next year. I definitely want to try and finish it because, well, I spent, you know, a lot of money on the entire series, which wasn't a good idea in hindsight. But also, I do believe that it improves over time. She's written this series over the course of many years, so I figured that her writing probably improved. By the time she published the last book, she had already published A Very Large Expanse of Sea, so I do anticipate that it will get better. I'm just not looking forward to reading this first one, because what I read so far was just not very appealing to me, unfortunately. The next book that I have to talk about is another young adult novel, and that is The Stars and the Blackness Between Them by Janata Petrus, which has been praised in our community, when I tell you, and understandably so, because it's a really interesting story about, you know, these 2 young black queer girls who fall in love, and, you know, it's bringing something to YA, it's bringing something to the table that we don't usually see, and for that this book has immense value. Also, the story is really good. I read the first 50 pages, but I couldn't stomach more than that, not because the story was bad, but because the author made a writing decision that did not work out in her favor. The author decides to write the main character's perspective in Trinidadian Creole, which is a very transgressive decision, and I think that that's a cool idea. The only problem is that it is completely and utterly inaccurate. I could not stomach how inaccurate this book was, so much so to the point where it came across as pretentious to me. It came across as if the author was really trying hard to make this book authentically Trini, but failed miserably. Oh god, it was so cringy to read the first 50 pages of this book, and there was this one thing that really set me off, and that's why I completely gave up on reading it, and that was when another Trinidadian character decided that she wanted to write a letter in longhand to the main Trinidadian character, and we get to read the letter, and it's in Creole.
What? Child. Anyway, so
not only is the Creole inaccurate in the letter, of course, but Trinidadians don't, Caribbean people in general, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't write letters in Creole. We don't write letters in Creole or patois, long-handed letters. No, you write that in standard English. Even if you're writing to your mother or your father, right? You write those letters in standard English. nobody writes letters in Creole. You might write a Facebook status or a text message or something like that in Creole, but you would never write a long-handed letter. There was also a part of the book, I kind of skipped about 100 pages in, there was a line that rubbed me the wrong way where the main character was telling the Americans how, you know, in Trinidad they don't get to stand up for their rights in schools because the teachers will be beating them all day and the parents will be beating them. And I was just like, what kind of craziness is this? What kind of myopic, exaggerated portrayal of Trinidadian culture is this? Don't get me started on the audiobook. I listened to like the first 1 minute of it and it sounded like an American trying to do a Jamaican accent. But, you know, I'm not going to put all the blame on the author. I think the publishers, like y'all, who do y'all have up there? If y'all listen to me, Penguin or Simon and Ship Girl, I don't know who the hell you is, but let me tell you something. If somebody comes to you with a Caribbean book and they are not from the Caribbean, you need to get some Caribbean editors, you need to get some beta readers or something. So I don't know how writing and publishing work, but y'all need to do better, especially with the audiobook. Y'all just gonna hire somebody and be like, do a generic Caribbean accent, like if that was going to bypass me. If you like this book and if you love it and if it validated you in any way, I am in no way trying to take away that, and by all means continue to praise it and love it and read it and uplift this author. I do think that this author has a lot of potential, and I hope that she writes more of this kind of stuff in the future, but I hope that she also considers some of the criticisms that she might have gotten from Trinidadian reviewers, especially those who actually finished the book as opposed to me. Moving on to some adult novels, we first have everybody's favorite, every booktube's child, The Puppy War by R.F. Kuang. Now this was a book that I was really enjoying. I got about 220 pages into it. I read the first part, right? So it's separated into part 1, 2, and 3. I read the first part and I really enjoyed it. What I liked about it is that it's a fantasy novel with not a lot of fantasy, and I'm not a fantasy lover, so that kind of light fantastical element I think was a really good gateway for me, and I was really enjoying it until I got to part 2. I just lost interest. It started to get a little bit more fantastical. We started getting perspective from another character who I just honestly was like, I was comfortable with Rin, why are you giving me somebody else, you know? So I just kind of stopped reading it, and around that time I had a lot of schoolwork and stuff as well, so I ended up just DNFing it, which is sad, and I probably shouldn't have done that, but it's been like maybe 2 months, and I don't know if I will start this over or continue from where I was. I think most likely at some point I'll just continue from where I was because I made a very smart decision, okay? I annotated the first 200 pages that I read, and I put a lot of notes in it. So I wrote down world building stuff, character stuff, fantasy and magic stuff, so that, you know, when I inevitably forget everything and I returned it, I could just read over those notes and kind of refresh myself as to what's going on. So hopefully it's not too much of a disaster if I go back into this book, but we'll see. What might be a disaster is when I go back into Axios End by Lindsay Ellis. This is a book that was actually sent to me by the publisher for an honest review, and I still didn't give them the honest review yet because I ain't finished the book. I was buddy reading this with Marinez from My Name is Marinez. I think she's since finished it, and I was really enjoying the story. It's an alien invasion story. It's a first contact story. It's written by a YouTuber whom I really adore, and I was enjoying the book a lot. I just stopped for literally no valid reason. It was around the same time that I stopped reading The Puppy War. I guess it's because of school or something. So I never finished it. I got about 100 pages in, and what's daunting me in terms of returning to the book is the fact that I didn't do the same thing that I did with The Puppy War. I didn't make any notes, and this book is very info-dumpy. Even though I was enjoying the story, the one critique that I had is that it was a little bit info-dumpy. There was a lot of names of reports and planets and aliens and wars and this and that and all kind of other things that I wasn't really like paying too close attention to. So I fear that when I go back into this book, I'll probably forget pretty much everything. So that's part of the reason why I've been so reluctant to return to it. But I need to at some point, and I don't want to reread the first 100 pages. I really don't. So maybe I might just consult with somebody who read the book and ask them, you know, to kind of refresh me on certain things as I, you know, try to ease back into the story. We'll see. But this is definitely one that I will finish because I have to do a review of it. And ending it off with another adult sci-fi novel, that is Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. This one is really sad because this is a book that I really thought I was going to love and was going to be one of my new favorites. And I think that it would have had I approached it differently. My problem is that I was listening to the audiobook and reading the physical book at the same time, which was working really well, but there were points where I was driving or doing laundry or doing other things or going to the gym and whatnot, and I decided to just listen to the audiobook alone. And this is a really dense, heavy, you know, sci-fi novel that I think requires a lot more attention and focus, and I wasn't really giving it that when I was just listening to the audiobook and letting the information kind of slip over my head. And so I kind of lost interest in it, and I wasn't picking up on certain things, and I had to keep like rereading pages and going back to certain parts and, you know, rewinding the audiobook, and it ended up turning into a task to the point where I just gave up and I ended up giving the book away. I gave it to my best friend so I could always borrow it back from her, and I do have the audiobook, so I could always listen to that if I feel compelled to, but I honestly just don't really see myself returning to this anytime soon. I felt like I had the chance and I blew it, which sucks. But hopefully one day, if you could convince me in the comments down below and give me a little bit more motivation, maybe I might borrow it back from my friend and, you know, do it the justice that it deserves and finish it, because I was really enjoying the story for what it was, and I do think that if I had paid proper attention to it, I could have finished it, and it would have been one of the best books that I read this year. So yeah, there you have it. Like, all of the books that I DNF'd were still all good books, with the exception of Shatter Me, which maybe I might like it, and Stars in the Blackness, which was a good book in terms of the story, but in terms of the representation of Trini culture, was a little bit more questionable. I do hope that I could return to all of these books and maybe appreciate them for what they are. Definitely I see myself doing that for Axios End and Poppy War. Not too sure about the other three. We'll see what happens. But if you want to convince me to read any of these in the comments down below, let me know if I should. Let me know your thoughts on any of these books if you have any thoughts to share. What books have you DNF'd this year, and why did you DNF them? And why do you DNF books in general? Do you DNF books that you enjoy? Do you DNF books that you don't enjoy? Let me know. Let's have a discussion about it. Thank you all ever so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day. And until next time, inshallah, keep reading.